are live. Welcome to Tonight in America. I'm your host, Dontarius Jones. And we have an exciting show tonight for you. I want to welcome you back here to a Friday morning, 2:51 a.m. I was supposed to be live at 10, and instead I went live like damn near 4 hours after. But we're still here. We are still here. So whoever's tuning in this late to watch the show, I want to appreciate you for tuning in right now. I think most of my audience is American. So, well, if you're seeing the stream on replay live in the morning, I would thank you for joining me in the morning when the sun is up, of course. But yeah, still going to do the show. Still going to give everyone a show right now, even though I'm a little late. Sorry about the late. Sorry about me being factually late a little bit, or functionally late, I would say. I was eating. I didn't eat anything before I came on stream, so I wanted to make sure I had something to eat before I came on stream. But today we're talking about Iran. We're talking about the possibility of warfare with Iran and how, I've said this before and I'll say it again on the show, how close are we at Iran? And it seems like every day we are getting more and more closer to warfare. And right now Trump is literally begging, he's begging Saudi Arabia to agree to allow us to use their airspace for possibility of attacks on Iran. They've made it clear they don't want anything involved with that, neither with the United States or with Iran. They pretty much are like best friends with both. Of course, Russia has made it clear they don't want this war to take place. You know, the UAE, of course, has made it clear they don't want nothing to do with this as well. You know, only two people I know for sure that'll pushing for this war. We're not even two. The entire European Union, of course, they're very much in favor of this. This is why they just recently just put sanctions on Iran, and they're designating the IRGC as a domestic terrorist organization. So that's that. But the United States, of course, is planning on attacking Iran because of the recent protests that took place in Iran. If you missed it, there was protests that were taking place all throughout the world. A little bit later, half of December, going into January. They just recently got the protests under control a couple of weeks ago. And now Trump is threatening Iran that if they were to execute all the prisoners that were taken during those, because of those protests, that we would strike them. Now, of course, there's no evidence that there are prisoners that were going to be executed. There was reports from multiple domestic news outlets saying that there were going to be executions, but prior intelligence that was done in Iran, and then from Iran itself, they've said that there was no knowledge that they were going to put any prisoners to execution. And then there was one on X that said that they already were executed, but that wasn't verified anywhere. So we do not know for sure what's going on with that, but we're going to explain everything up until now, what's really going on, exactly how bad is this really going to get. Okay, how bad is this war with Iran really going to get? And pretty much, are we almost there? Because at any moment right now, you can wake up, I can go to sleep right now, and I can wake up when the sun is up, and we already struck Iran. That's how bad it's getting right now, ladies and gentlemen, to the point where war with Iran could be at any moment, any day, at any time. So it's getting really bad out here. So this is not nothing to really play about right now. I know, I understand we got some stuff going on domestically with all this ICE stuff. We have everyone protesting the streets. You know, everyone's crying about deportations, even though we really need the deportations. We know we have a bunch of illegal immigrants in this country that need to be deported. They need to go home. And people are out here being, you know, stupid and trying to get in the way of federal officers from doing their jobs, which is the most asinine thing I've ever seen in my life. But I digress. So, but we're gonna jump right into everything right now and start covering everything and go from the timeline of where we're at and where we are right now and how close are we. But first, I want to bring you back a little bit to 1979, when really all of this kick-started because of a certain thing called, well, really, I'll go back to the 1950s. Let's go back to the 50s when Mohammed Mossadegh was the prime minister of Iran at the time. And he, along with the Shah, were in charge of running the country and were helping Iran bloom economically at the time. Iran wasn't the Iran that we know of today. It was a different time and a different place. It was underneath a different system, a authoritarian system, not a monarch system. It was run by the Shah along with his prime minister, Mohammed Mossadegh, who was overthrown because of a certain operation that was conducted by the CIA called Project Ajax. When Mossadegh was overthrown, the Shah was given full executive power, and then he became a de facto ruler in order to basically ensure that the oil that Iran has, it has a bunch of rich oil. If you don't notice, this is exactly what enriched Iran over the years. When the Shah was given it full-on executive power, he was able to use his power to better conduct business deals and trade deals to get the oil shipped overseas to not only Europe but to the United States, and to better enrich the GDP of Iran and to grow its economy. So as time goes on, there was a lot of that happen. You know, the Shah created his special police force called I lost my train of thought. He created his special police force. I believe it was called the it was something, it'll come back to me, but he created a special police force. And then, as you know, there's a lot of brutality in the streets because of this. And then it led to a lot of protest in the streets because the Iranian people were tired of being on the thumb of the Shah. So the Shah got rid of his police force or whatever. And then also the sentiment didn't change at all in the streets. You would notice the similarities between that and the current protest that happened just recently. But if you know, over the years or so, if you're keeping up with the Iranian news, the Middle East news, Iran, they've had countless, and I mean countless, protests in the streets. It's their way of life at this point. So because it's their way of life, you will see countless protests almost every day. They've had a protest about women's rights. They've had a protest about economic issues. And all this is pretty much the reason why all these issues are happening is because it started really in 1979 when the Iranian Revolution happened, when the Iranian people were tired of being underneath the Shah and they wanted a change of a system. They rioted and rioted and rioted to the point where the people rose up in a revolution to overthrow the Shah, which he led to him fleeing Iran. And then then came back Khomeini. Ayatollah Khomeini at the time was the first of the many Ayatollahs to come into power and to implement a new system in Iran, basically the monarch system that is currently ruling Iran right now. Then after this revolution, of course, well, really, let me go back right quick before we skim ahead. During this revolution, when Khomeini came into power, he asked the United States, of course, because that's where the Shah fled to. They wanted the Shah to be extradited back to Iran to face trial and to be imprisoned. Now, of course, that didn't happen. The United States would not capitulate. They would not agree to this. So instead, what did they do? They went to the U.S. embassy that was in Iran. They stormed the facility and took a bunch of U.S. hostages. So it led to the United States basically be put on a hard ball, on a hard place, to where they had no choice but to give up the Shah, because there was U.S. lives, there was U.S. citizens' lives on the line. So because that happened, the Shah had to go. The Shah was agreed. It was agreed upon between Iran and the U.S. that the Shah would be traded for those U.S. lives. He went back to Iran, but of course, he was going to go back to Iran, but he died before he even could get there. Medical issues happened. The Shah was facing a lot of severe medical issues, and he was already told he was not going to live. So he was already going to pass. So he did pass, of course, and he was buried in Iran. And to this day, right now, after that happened, of course, now because of those because the Iranian people, the students of Khomeini, stormed the U.S. facility. That's when diplomatic ties between Iran and the U.S. were broken forever. Even to this day, it's still never been repaired. So, and then we put sanctions on Iran at that point. We put sanctions on them from that point on, and we've never really truly lifted them off since then. Now, fast forward to under Obama's administration. So under Obama's administration, he was looking to stop Iran from enriching uranium. At the time, Iran was enriching uranium. That was the first of many times, of course. They was enriching uranium. There's enriching uranium at a certain percentage that was worrying to the United States. So to prevent that from happening, because Iran made it clear they were not going to stop enriching uranium, Obama came up with an idea of creating a enrichment agreement. Basically, he came up with creating a nuclear agreement between the U.S. and Iran and the European Union. So this was agreed upon by Iran and the U.S. and the European Union. Everything was signed. Iran would not enrich at a certain amount, and the U.S. would take off the sanctions. Now, fast forward after Obama's term ended, his second term ended, we go into Trump's term. So in Trump's term, when he came in, he ripped up the agreement between Iran and the U.S. Then he put massive amounts of crippling sanctions on Iran to hurt their economy. Once that happened, Iran's economy was pretty much destroyed at that point because their GDP had grown when Obama lifted some of those sanctions off of Iran. Their GDP had grown substantially to a good rate to where the economy was blooming. Everything was looking great at that moment. But when Trump came in, he ripped that up. He destroyed that. He destroyed the agreement and basically said Iran cannot nuclearize at all. Now, since this happened in the first Trump term, nothing significant has happened. Now we go to Biden's term. Under Joe Biden in 2020, we go into the Biden administration and we go into basically what led to the Gaza genocide. So if everyone pretty much already knows, but I'll go ahead and repeat this. During October 7, when Israel was attacked, surprisingly enough, even though you could just debate that maybe they allowed themselves to be attacked to basically get the green light to go and conduct their genocide, because if you look at Israel and you understand the stories about people who've been there, who've flown there, who've been into the country, you would know that people that have been into the country have said it's built like a fortress. It's hard to penetrate that place because of how well guarded it is. So because of this surprising attack, which caught everyone off by surprise, because like you hear the stories about how fortified Israel was, it's amazing to me to how they were able to be taken a surprise, basically. Like how were they able to be, caught by surprise? So Hamas was able to get in. They were able to take hostages, kill some Israelis, of course. Then they go back, to their hideouts with a bunch of hostages, which in turn led to the IDF basically being given the green light by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to go out there to the Gaza Strip and conduct the genocide. Massive amounts of bombings, massive amounts of shooting, people being tortured, people being raped, people being burnt alive. So much chaos. Now, through all of this, it was a tragic event. But at the same time, Israel was steadfast on one thing too as well, while they were also conducting this operation in Palestine, was going after Iran. Because if you don't know, Hamas is part of this big alliance called the Axis of Resistance, which includes Iran, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Syria. What's the purpose of the Axis of Resistance? is to ensure Iran's survival. That's what the purpose of the Axis of Resistance was, is to ensure that Iran doesn't necessarily have to get themselves involved militarily, because they have their proxies. That's what every one of these, that's what all these groups are that were involved in this alliance. They were proxies. So the proxies of Iran were there to ensure that Iran doesn't militarily have to get involved, because then Israel would have to not only worry about Hamas, they have to worry about the Houthis, they have to worry about Hezbollah, not only in Lebanon, but there are some in Iraq. So they have two spots where the Hezbollah was located at, and then they also have to worry about Syria under Bashar al-Assad. So when you look at all these details right here about the Axis of Resistance, you realize like Iran has a massive amounts of like well-funded proxy groups to ensure that they don't necessarily have the military get involved at the start. They have, because Israel has to go through all of Iran's proxies in order to fight the big dog. I'll give you like that in like the black, the average black terms or whatever. So because of this is the case, it always was kind of impossible for Israel by itself to go and really have a one-on-one fight with Iran, because for years they've been pushing for this. Under the Obama term, they were angry when Obama created the nuclear agreement with Iran. Even much so, Netanyahu went to the parliament. When he went to Congress, he went there, stand in front of them, and told Obama exactly that this was a bad idea and this shouldn't be done. We should go out there and destroy Iran. He's been pushing for this for years. He's been saying for years how Iran is like weeks away from a nuclear weapon. Decades he's been saying this, and yet you could always like ask this question, like what exactly is a week away? Because you've been saying this for like so long that they're weeks away from building a nuclear weapon. They're weeks away from building a nuclear weapon. To this day, we still don't even know what exactly they're building. We don't know if they're building a nuclear weapon or not, because they made it clear that they're rich in uranium for environmental purposes, to help them strengthen their country environmentally. So, because you can use nuclear energy for really to help strengthen a country and to help grow a country, environmentally. It can also help good economically. So, but to go back, Benjamin Netanyahu was mad about the nuclear agreement between Iran and the U.S. Even much so, he came to U.S., complained about it, whatever. Now, we go to Trump's term or whatever. Trump comes in, and Trump is, as you may know, he's the most pro-Israel president probably in history. Even much so. He's more pro-Israel than anybody. More than Lyndon B. Johnson. More than Richard Nixon. Definitely more than Obama. He's more than Bill Clinton, more than any of these other presidents that have been in history that have said how much they love Israel. And even Joe Biden himself. So Joe Biden said, "Oh, there's nobody that's more pro-Israel than him." Even though technically speaking, the Israelis hate him, and when he was in power, or whatever, he didn't do enough to aid them or assist them. He wouldn't even go to war with Iran for them. But Trump comes in. Trump has done almost everything the Israeli lobby asked. And you know why? It's because he got the donations from donors that told him to do so. Because the money that he was given for his campaign up until his second election was basically given to him out of a promise. And what was that promise? He would go and strike Iran. Now, what we're dealing with today is, quite frankly, something that he promised he would never do. Up to if you've kept up with almost his full-on election one in 2024, you realize he ran on no new wars. He ran on he would not start any wars. He would end wars instead. And so far, he's done a good job on that. But one war, one of the major ones he didn't end was the Russia and Ukraine war, which is still raging on. And since then, he's changed his tune and says that, well, that one's not as easy as he thought he could to end that war. So that's still raging on. Then, Hamas and Israel have finally come to an agreement, a peace agreement, which will ultimately, they lead to a ceasefire agreement, which will ultimately lead to a peace agreement once the new governance of Gaza comes into power and Hamas lays down its arms and leaves the Gaza Strip, and then Israel fully pulls out. But if we've seen recently, Israel's not really so keen on keeping that promise because they've accused Hamas many of times of breaking the agreement between them, and vice versa. Hamas accuses Israel of breaking the agreement too. So even though Trump has ended that conflict with Hamas and Israel, we still don't know 100% if the bloodshed's really truly stopped, because it could start up at any other time. Along with this, what's going on right now with Iran, we've been hearing now for weeks, months now, of the Trump administration change tunes from not wanting to go and commit to a regime change to now fully expressing their desire for a regime change in Iran. Even much so because of these protests. Why these protests were even happening in the first place? Well, you want to know why these protests were happening? It's because of the crippling sanctions that Trump put on Iran. If Trump really cared about the Iranian people like he says he wants to, instead of going there and militarily getting involved and overthrowing their governments, he would take off the sanctions. Because that's what's destroying Iran. It's not, the people have their grievances with their regime or whatever, and they blame the regime. That's exactly what Scott Bessent told Trump before he put these crippling sanctions on Iran's country, was that he needs to put these sanctions in economically without having to militarily get involved and just let the people overthrow the regime itself. Now, of course, it didn't happen. The regime managed to get everything under control. There was no overtoppling the government. All the people went back home. We don't have regime change in Iran. So you know what else Trump wants to do now? Now he's getting to the point of he wants to militarily go out there and strike and target and destroy the regime instead of economically doing it this time, because he realized that didn't work out the way it was supposed to, and now they might have to militarily get involved. So now we've been seeing massive developments over these last couple of weeks now with the slowdown and now the full containment of all these protests in Iran, to the point now Trump is now weighing his options of military strikes on Iran. Now it was about, if they kill the protesters, we will go out there and strike Iran. Now the new talking points is, now if they rebuild their stockpile of missiles, which Iran makes all of his ballistic missiles in their own factories, they're buried deep on the ground, we will go there and we will strike them. And now everything has been heating up right now. Now we have countries that sit here and say they do military actions should not take place. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, all countries that are arguing against this conflict to take place. And most of all, Iran. Iran wants diplomacy. They don't want a conflict. They don't want to take this to the military, to the fields. They don't want lives to be lost, money to be spent, because war is costly. We're going to spend a lot of money on this war and people are going to die. So the fact that people are going to die is the worrying part. That's why people are adamant about this even happening. The average common folk does not want their taxpaying dollars going towards funding a war. They do not. The difference is with this instance and the Venezuela stuff is that it was easy to go there and take out Maduro because of how, I have to be completely honest, how pathetic Venezuela's military is. Iran's military is not pathetic at all. The IRGC, the It's not nothing to be taken lightly. The military is not nothing to be taken lightly. They have massive amounts of missiles for a reason. Because Israel knows if it does fight Iran right now, when they're stocking up more and more and more missiles, they could attack Iran right now and try to bombard them from the skies. It wouldn't work out. That's why, like in this new agreement right now, besides zero enrichment, they want them to slack up on uh any pretty much any more creations of more missiles. They want them to cease their missile productions to basically bare minimum to none. So that way, that puts them in like a Libya situation. You know, you've seen articles recently. Israel says they want the Libya model for Iran. Why? What is the Libya model? Well, when Mahmoud Gaddafi decided to get rid of his enrichment program, because he was also close to enriching uranium to the same degree as Iran is right now, the deal between the United States at the time and also the Barack Obama administration at the time was that he would stop the enrichment and he would get rid of his missiles program. That was a big mistake. He was bombarded on a live broadcast. He was sodomized and killed. So it's not an option for, if you're looking at it, if you're Iran, you're looking at this strategically, and you're realizing that this is not a good option. This is not something we should agree to, and it's just going to put us in a bad bind to leaving us vulnerable for a massive attack that's going to wipe us out and completely destroy us. And then history regime change in the Middle East from the United States perspective has never been good. You've seen this all the time. We've been in the Middle East. We've had our dealings in the Middle East all the time. I mean, we've destabilized so many countries. Libya was one. I mentioned it already. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, currently speaking, destabilized. Even if they're starting to manage to get a little bit under control right now, it's still like dealing with so much anarchy right now in the streets of Syria. You know, it's mind-boggling. We've destabilized a lot of countries in the Middle East to now that we have a bad reputation in the Middle East. And now the Iranian regime, of course, over the years does not trust the United States. It does not trust the United States for that very reason. And who would blame them? So if you're looking at this and you're be given like a maximalist deal to where you have to take this maximalist deal to where you get rid of your uranium enrichment completely, and then you also have to slack up and then ultimately stop creating ballistic missiles programs to ensure your country's survival. When you're looking at this on paper, you're looking at this like this is insane of a deal, and this is like we can never really truly accept it. Like no country would. So that's putting them in that position to where they can't enrich uranium, nor can they make their ballistic missiles and hypersonic missiles too as well. Let's not forget that they also make hypersonic missiles, supersonic missiles. If they can't manufacture their missile program, and then also simultaneously they can't have an enrichment program either for uranium, that puts them in a very bad light. So why would they pursue a bomb if that was the case that they were? Now they have a reason. It's because their survival. Because if they don't enrich uranium, if they don't make a bomb, even though I'm not saying they are or not, intelligence keeps saying they are not. This is Israeli. This is United States. This is Europe and Iran intelligence have said they're not making a bomb. The point of the matter is that if they agree to this maximalist deal, they're putting themselves in a situation to where they could be destroyed ultimately. And it's not a smart move, but the Trump administration knows that. Marco Rubio, who was at a recent committee hearing, said this too. He hopes that President Trump would agree to go destroy this evil regime that is oppressing his people, even though technically speaking, if we really wanted to help the people were being done in from sanctions that were put in place by Trump. Trump did this to the regime. He did this to the people of Iran. This is the reason why they're having these issues over the years from all these protests, because if the sanctions were lifted and Iran was allowed to basically trade with countries in the trading route to grow their GDP, they wouldn't be dealing with the hardship that they're dealing with right now. Their dollar's effectively useless. But because United States is in bed with Israel, we have to basically, and then of course, like I brought this up earlier, Trump was given $100 million by Miriam Adelson. The reason why he was given that much money is because that's basically blood money. That's basically money ensuring that he will go and start war with Iran to ensure it leads to regime change. Now, it brings us right back to today. Trump is pushing more and more for it right now. He's trying to get Saudi Arabia to agree to us so we can allow us to use their airspaces in case we were to commit airstrikes or whatever on Iran. They're trying to get other countries around their region to agree to support the war. Of course, everyone is not on agreement right now with it. As a matter of fact, economically, it just doesn't make sense. A lot of countries are realizing that. The only two that are really pushing for this are like United States and Israel the most. Europe has just recently, they are trying to designate the IRGC as a international terrorist organization. And why is that? Because say the U.S. and Iran do go into a war, the U.S. can call on some NATO allies to also join as well. And how would they be able to attack Iran and also the IRGC and the military? Is by labeling them as you labeled them a national terrorist organization. You're able to then commenced military action against that organization because they are labeled a terrorist organization. That's how. So this like I said, the money, the donor money, Israel's constant need and want to destabilize and destroy the Iranian regime, then to put in place a puppet dictator or ruler to ensure democracy comes, and they are a pro-Western friendly leader that is always going to do the bidding of the United States and Israel, and is not going to enrich uranium at all, and it's going to basically get rid of their ballistic missiles program and just basically comply with whatever the U.S. and Israel wants. That is the possibility of what could happen. The other possibility is that they end up like Libya and they never really truly recover, and there's always constant battle domestically. They're always constant fighting. They're always constant, warfare, unrest in the streets, and people are constantly just losing their lives. So that's the options right there of what's going to happen. And we've moved so much military equipment, fighter jets, the USS Abraham Lincoln had just arrived to the Middle East, to the Strait of Hormuz. It's a big, giant aircraft carrier to carry a bunch of like fighter jets, we're going to get over that, but pretty much fighter jets and, pretty much tanks, everything you could think of right now. It's carrying a bunch of military load to basically ensure that whenever we decide to go and face Iran head on, we have the necessary needs to better assist the soldiers on the ground. Because to commit to like a regime change, you would need you would need boots on the ground. It wouldn't be done just by strikes because like even the U.S. intelligence don't even know where Khomeini is even at. The Ayatollah. They don't know where he's at currently. They have no idea where his whereabouts is at. The regime, of course, the rest of the regime is out and about, and everyone has their locations tracked. But in order to execute a real regime change, you need boots on the ground. So in order to ensure that happens, they would need military, they would need a bunch of weaponry, of course. They would need jets, they need fighter jets, they need tanks, the weapons. They would need everything they need in order to ensure this regime change is successful and that they wipe out almost every little aspect of this regime and completely wipe it out completely. So that's the distorted monologue right now. If you're an American and you're seeing what's going on right now, like we have a lot going on right now domestically, like I said earlier, we have a lot going on, but this right here is a very much more important issue because like this is literally putting us in the middle of a war when we shouldn't be in a war. We shouldn't even be in a war at all. We were promised no new wars during his election run, and now he's going back on his word, and now we are having wars. So let's get into the articles right quick. And then I have some videos at the end for you guys to watch. So Mossad chief arrives in Florida to discuss Iran strategy with top U.S. officials. So if you don't know, this is the director of Mossad right here. All right. So the director of Israel's Mossad intelligence agencies arrived in the U.S. on 16 January for talks with officials on the situation in Iran, following weeks of foreign-backed violent riots and nation unrest. So he arrived here. This was posted on January 16th, 2026. So he arrived, he came here, he talked with some officials to strategize exactly how would they go about trying to execute this military strikes on Iran and how would they go about achieving success. Now, as you know, during the riots, it was basically stated that the CIA and Mossad had people on the grounds during the riots. This was later confirmed as well through Mike Pompeo, the former CIA director and Secretary of State, who wrote on X saying that Merry Christmas to, well, I believe he said it was New Year's. Happy New Year's to all the Iranian people that are fighting on the streets against their tyrannical government. Happy New Year's to you and to all the Mossad agents that are on the streets right there next to you. So it's shocking to hear that, but it's not surprising because like during the 12-day war in June of last year, Mossad agents were revealed to be inside of Iran already, because when the surprise attack happened, a lot of the missile defensive systems were disabled and destroyed effectively because there were Mossad agents already on the ground and made contact with those defensive missile launchers. So Kurdish separatists, if you don't know, the Kurds are like this ethnic group that's like a minority in Iran, where they're not even in the Iranian borders. They're like at the border of like Iraq. They're like at the end border going into Iran. They live in that little part right there. And during the 1980s war between Iraq and Iran, they were targeted. Well, this was like I think years after the war already had started. Like I read like 1984 maybe, I believe. 1983, I believe Saddam Hussein had dropped nuclear poison in the air to poison the Kurds, basically. So the Kurds were poisoned. It was a war crime, actually. It was very horrific what happened. I was watching a documentary about it recently. You know, I watched it so many times, but like just to know that he poisoned the Kurds because they basically like they were like casualties of war. So the Kurdish separatist militia admits to targeting Iranian security forces during the recent riots. The Kurdish Freedom Party, PAK, and Iranian Kurdish separatist militia admitted on 15 January that it that its members carried out armed operations against security forces in Iran, framing the attacks as a defensive for protesters. PAC members played a role in protests through both financial support and armed operations to defend protesters when needed, PAC representative told AP. So as it goes on right here, we're going to Al Jazeera now. Iran's Khomeini says U.S. Israel links behind thousands killed in protests. So like I mentioned earlier about Israel, Mossad and the United States' CIA were involved in the protest, not just encouraging them through social media and video posts, but also there on the ground. It's been said many times before that there was a recent story describing exactly that there was a bunch of figures in dark clothing that were there during the protest, and they were killing protesters. And they were not the IRGC. No, these were people that weren't supposed to. Basically, it was alleged that was Mossad. So as this article from Al Jazeera goes on, Iran Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khomeini says Khomeini says actors linked to the United States and Israel were responsible for killing several thousands of people during the weeks of the anti-government protests in the country. Those linked to Israel and the U.S. caused massive damages and killed several thousands during the protests that convulsed Iran for more than 2 weeks, Khomeini says on Saturday. This is from antiwar.com. It's time to look for new leadership in Iran. This is the sentiment from Trump again. He keeps pushing this rhetoric about regime change in Iran, and he said he wasn't liking the idea of a regime change. His tone has changed so many times, but it's clear that now he can openly express that he wants regime change instead of, sitting here saying that we should if they don't want it, we should have diplomacy with them. Instead, seems like it's not the case at all. It seems like to me it was never the case, and they just want regime change. So, as the article goes on, President Trump suggested that the U.S. was still planning to conduct a regime change in Iran. It's time to look for new leadership in Iran, Trump told Politico on Saturday. The remarks came after the president decided not to attack Iran on Wednesday. Trump was considering strikes on Iran after the Islamic Republic cracked down on protests. The president made multiple statements encouraging the demonstrators and threatening the Iranian government. Trump has also said he would attack the Islamic Republic for rebuilding its nuclear program and missile facilities. While Trump elected not to attack Iran last week, U.S. officials said the strikes are still an option, according to sources speaking with Axios. A decision point could come within weeks. The U.S. currently has a significantly smaller military presence in the Middle East than it did during the Israeli war against Iran in June. That's also another reason why Trump didn't want to strike a meter, because he was told by some officials because they didn't have enough military presence in the Middle East at the time, because a lot of our presidents were in Central and South America because of all the recent shakeup that happened in Venezuela. Most of all of our guys were down there in South and Central America. So we didn't have nobody in the middle. We didn't have really hardly anybody in the Middle East. And in case we did strike Iran at the time, like it was planned, because they were planned to strike them, even if they allegedly guaranteed that they were not going to execute anybody during the protest, Trump still already gave the go ahead and bomb Iran if it was quick and done. And that did not materialize because he was told by most of the people that was in the administration that the strike wouldn't be a quick and done thing. It would be a prolonged war. So that's why Trump didn't greenlight the attack, and now he pushed it off, and now he's looking to really go through and execute this military operation, because now the USS Abraham Lincoln has arrived, and it's carrying a bunch of, like I said, tanks, weaponry, air support, air attacks, missile barrages too as well. They want to ensure, and then they also don't want the military base, because Iran has promised that they not only would they retaliate against the United States if it attacks Iran, they will also strike the military base that's also present in the Middle East, the Al Udeid base. Last time they alerted the U.S. to allow them to evacuate some of their servicemen, but this time they guaranteed they will attack it, and most likely will not give us the heads up either. So as the article goes on, while Trump elected not to attack Iran, well, I already read that part. The U.S. currently has a significantly smaller I already read that too. Originally, the U.S. lacks military defense in the region to protect American forces in Israel from retaliatory strikes. However, the U.S. is ramping up its military footprint in the Middle East as the USS Abraham Lincoln is set to arrive in the region later this week. Fast forward today, it already arrived. So advocates for regime change in Iran often call for installing Reza Pahlavi in Tehran. Pahlavi is the son of the former Shah of Iran, who was disposed by the Islamic Revolution. Trump dismissed the idea of Pahlavi taking power, suggesting he lacked proper support in Iran. It's even funny enough, during the protests, there were some people in the crowd that were chanting Pahlavi's name and saying that he should come in power. It's being said, and these aren't confirmed, but it's being said that those people that were doing that were Mossad. That's what's being said right now. That those people that were chanting for Pahlavi were Mossad, and they was encouraging the Iranian people to get along and get on board and start chilling for him, so that way they can raise the support for Pahlavi to come in and take power. Now, of course, when many people don't listen this part, there were counter protests that was going on for support of the regime. As many people may see, you may have the anti-protest, but the one protest that was not gaining any news coverage was the pro-protest. And then you have all these anti-Iranian or Persians that were in America or in European countries that were sitting there and telling them that these protests were not real and that Trump should go and strike the regime and take them out. Of course, you have all these, Iranians that are here in America or say in Europe that are encouraging the United States to go and fight their battles when they left their countries to flee and come here to the West. And they're now galvanizing basically the people and trying to motivate Trump, especially after the operation in Venezuela, to go there to Iran and just take out the regime. Of course. So it just goes to show you, none of this is America first. Let me just go ahead and just say this right now. None of this is putting America first. This is not at all even what an America first strategy looks like. Going there and fighting a battle in Iran is not America first. We've already guaranteed we want to pull out of the Middle East. That was according to our national security strategy. We want to prioritize our hemisphere more and commit to strengthen our hemisphere that's going to benefit us. Now we're backdooring off of that, and now we're going right back to the Middle East and just doing what we've done before in the past. We're committing more regime change wars, and we're going to destabilize another country, even though we said we would not do that. That was the plan, to get out the Middle East. Now we've been drawing right back into it. Okay. So let's go on right here. So Iran arrests 470 linked to foreign-backed unrest. Okay. So Iranian security and intelligence forces have arrested more than 470 individuals across 3 provinces, identified them as key agents behind recent violent unrest and terrorist acts linked to foreign-backed networks. This is when I said earlier about the possibility of being the CIA was not even a possibility. It's actually confirmed that, yeah, CIA and Mossad had people on the ground. We saw that through the 12-day war, like I mentioned it earlier. During the 12-day war, Mossad was activated, and they also basically destroyed Iran's defensive missile capabilities and rendered them defenseless at first until they rebounded and they responded to Israel with a bunch of their missile barrages. So the intelligence ministry's Provincial office in current fuck I can't, I'm gonna pronounce this probably wrong, so forgive me if I say this wrong. Khorasan Reza V announced the arrest of 192. I need to really get brushed up on some Middle Eastern. I need to really start really trying to learn more Middle Eastern, how to pronounce some of these names that are like English translated. 192 armed terrorists described as the main operatives behind deadly riots in the region. According to an official statement, the detainees were involved in the killing of civilians and security personnel, arson attacks on mosques, public infrastructure, and buses, as well as assaults on military and police centers. All right, so we have to go on right here. Trump asks for decisive military operations for Iran. According to sources speaking with the Wall Street Journal, Trump is pressing top American officials to develop plans for attacking Iran that would be decisive. The operations under the development range from striking Iranian military forces and are attempting to overthrow the government with a bombing campaign. U.S. military personnel in the Middle East and the Iranian government believed Trump was going to order strikes on Iran last week. However, after speaking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he declined to give the order. An official said that Netanyahu told Trump that Israel was unprepared for an Iranian counterattack. This is also key important. Let me bring this up there right quick. This is key. This is really important. So during December, like close to Christmas, going to like New Year's, Benjamin Netanyahu came to the White House. What did he come to the White House for? He came to convince Trump to go to war with Iran, to basically attack Iran because they were trying to re-up their missile program. Now, of course, now the tone has changed now, because the tone changed a little bit because the protest in Iran started. So they were hoping, Israel and the U.S. were hoping for the regime to be overthrown organically by its people, or inorganically, if you could say, because they were egged on by the U.S. and Israel and foreign-backed actors. So because like they were hoping that the regime was going to be overthrown by the people, instead Israel decided to just do a new strategy and was just encourage the regime, where encourage the Iranian people to basically overthrow its government and liberate itself. That didn't happen, of course. Now Israel's changing its sentiment right now because they're not militarily ready right now, because that 12-day war, not only did it impact Iran, it impacted Israel. So now they're not ready to go to war right now. They haven't re-upped their, they haven't pretty much restocked all their military equipment, especially their Iron Dome, which has taken significant it took a lot of missiles to intercept a lot of those ballistic and hypersonic missiles. So Iran is having to refill up all their defensive missile capabilities as well, which is going to cost them a lot of money. So right now, currently speaking, they're not militarily ready right now to even think about going back and restart the conflict with Iran. So they're going to have to just wait. This is why nothing's happened right now, because Israel wants to be able to join the U.S. in this conflict to ensure that the Iranian regime is overthrown. So as the article goes on right here, now we're going to jump right back into the article. Okay, so where was I at? An official. All right, an official said that Netanyahu told Trump that Israel was unprepared for the Iranian counterattack. Trump's advisors also could not give an assurance to the president that the planned attack would cause the Iranian government to fall. U.S. officials were additionally concerned that the Department of War leaked the necessary military equipment in the Middle East to defend American soldiers from Iranian retaliatory attacks. Trump will have more options for a larger attack on Iran in the coming weeks as the U.S. is moving military assets to the Middle East. The president has ordered an aircraft carrier strike group, air defense systems, and additional fighter jets to the Middle East. In recent months, the U.S. moved two aircraft carrier strike groups out of the Middle East, including the USS Gerald Ford, and the Ford and its support ships were moved into Latin America to target Venezuela. It's kind of getting a little hot in here. Holy shit. Whew. Let me turn my air on right quick. All right, let's jump back in right now. Okay, so this is from the Associated Press. Iranian prosecutor denies Trump's claim 800 prisoners were spared execution. So this is, remember I told you earlier about the alleged execution that was supposed to take place as to why Trump did not go along with his first threat, that if they execute, well, his second threat actually, because he promised that if they started executing protesters in the streets that he would attack Iran. Then his second threat was that if they execute all the prisoners of the riot at a planned execution date, then he would go and strike Iran too as well. So now we can go over here. Iran's top prosecutor on Friday called U.S. President Donald Trump's repeated claims that he halted the hangings of 800 detained protesters that they're completely false. Meanwhile, the overall death toll from a bloody crackdown of this year demonstrators rose to at least 5,032 activists today, activists said. Currently, that figure is actually at 6,000. So there's been 6,000 reported dead from the riots. So this is from an article that was like a couple of days ago. This was like on the 23rd. So now we go to Middle East Eye. Trump says U.S. Armada moving towards Iran. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Thursday that he is sending an armada towards Iran, targeting Tehran against resuming its nuclear program. Speaking to reports aboard Air Force One after returning from meetings with world leaders in Davos, Switzerland, Trump said Washington was closely monitoring Iran as U.S. naval assets moved into the region. We have a lot of ships, going that direction, just in case, Trump said. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. He added, we have an armada heading in the direction, and maybe we won't have to use it. U.S. officials speaking anonymously to Reuters said the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln and several guided missile destroyers were expected to arrive in the Middle East in the coming days. Okay, so this was a couple of days ago. This was on the 23rd. This was also on the 23rd. So Israeli propaganda calls on angel investors to fund Iran destabilization efforts. So this was a this is from a known Israeli propagandist that's on X. Her name is Emily I'm gonna probably fumble her last name. So basically, I'll put up her X account too as well for you guys. If you guys want to know who she is, a U.S. Israeli journalist and activist known for lobbying and propaganda against Iran, has publicly acknowledged working with former members of Israel's Unit 8200 to set up covert digital and financial networks inside Iran. Unit 8200 is Israel's military intel unit responsible for signals intel, espionage, cyber warfare, surveillance, and code breaking. Yeah, mouth is dry. They're attacking Iran on many different fronts right now. So they're trying to get Iran not only militarily, battlefield, airstrikes, whatever, they're also trying to destroy them digitally. That's the reason why the digital blackout happened, the internet blackout happened during the riots, because like a lot of these, it was being alleged that a lot of these foreign actors that were on the ground during the protests, they were alleging that because of the Starlink internet service, that they were receiving their information from their handlers, like the CIA, the Mossad, or whatever. So that's why the internet blackout happened, was to prevent them from getting their intel. So that's what led to the blackout, and why the Iranian people, well, the Iranian government had to go along with this plan of like darkening the internet for a couple of days. It's back up now, but the reason why they had to do it is because they have foreign actors on the ground that were trying to basically destabilize and destroy the government. So their entire existence is on the line right here. So it was any means necessary to ensure that the Iranian government would not be overthrown or they'd be destroyed. Because at first it was looking a little bit scary right now with those protests that the protests were getting very, very much more violent and uncontrollable based on the videos that I was watching. But they were able to quell that problem pretty quickly. So this is another one. This one is another article from Middle East Eye. Israeli report says Jordan and UAE to support potential U.S. Attack on Iran. Now, of course, this actually changed because the UAE recently, under a recent news report that I read earlier today, actually, that the UAE does not want the war. It was alleged, but this was like a couple of days ago, like the 25th, but they do not want the war. They don't want this fight to commence. But I'll go ahead on and read the article. Jordan, the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and the United Kingdom would provide logistical and intelligence support to the U.S. military in the event of an attack on Iran, according to the Israeli media report. The Daily Israel Hayom reported on Sunday that the senior figures in Donald Trump's administration are pushing for what described as a strong attack on Iran, framing it as a fundamental strategic move. The report said the move is also backed by Abu Dhabi and several European countries, including the UK. According to Israel Hayom, the UAE, Britain, and Jordan would share intelligence and operational data to support Washington and could play a role in intercepting Iranian missiles and drones launched in retaliation. Such defensive operations would aim to protect Israel, U.S. military bases in the Middle East, and key energy infrastructure in the Gulf, the report said. So, Israeli army SITCOM chiefs hold extended meeting amid threats of war on Iran. The head of U.S. Central Command SITCOM, Brad Cooper, met with Israeli Army Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir on 24th January, their second meeting in just a few weeks, which comes amid regional concerns of a new war against Iran. The Israeli army said in a statement on Sunday that the two held an extended one-on-one meeting. The engagement serves as another expression of the relationship between the commanders and constitutes an additional step in enhancing the close strategic relationship between the IDF and U.S. military and in strengthening defense cooperation between the two nations, it added. Iran-backed militias in Iraq and Yemen threaten new attacks as U.S. aircraft carrier arrives. So this right here, this article came out when the USS Abraham Lincoln had finally made it to the Middle East. So now that it finally touched up, this article was dropped. This was on the 27th. It was dropped, and now we're basically getting exactly more information about what's being said. And now we're also getting basically the Houthis, they're still around, and part of Hezbollah, which is in Iraq, they're making it known that if there is an attack on Iran from the U.S., they would get involved too, and they will attack more, you know, shipment ships that are going through the Red Sea. So let's go ahead and read. Two Iranian-backed militias in the Middle East are signaling their willingness to launch new attacks, likely trying to back Iran, as officials acknowledge the arrival of U.S. aircraft carrier to the region Monday. President Donald Trump ordered the carriers to move to the Middle East as he threatened military action over its crackdown on nationwide protests. Yemen's Iranian-backed Houthi rebels on Monday hinted they were ready to resume attacks on shipping in the Red Sea. That came just after Iraq's Hezbollah paramilitary group, long supported by Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard, issued a direct threat late Sunday toward an attack targeting Iran, warning a total war in the region would be a result. So as you can see, the proxies are still there. They're effectively like pretty much like they've been hindered, effectively like kind of useless right now, but they're still there. Okay, they're not out of the woods yet. They're still very much there. So, and they've made it clear, if we do go to a front-on assault on Iran, they will get involved too. So got one right here. This one's from antiwar.com about the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier arriving in the Middle East. So the U.S. Abraham Lincoln and its support ships have arrived in the Middle East as President Donald Trump is mulling strikes on Iran. As U.S. official told CBS News that the USS Lincoln aircraft carrier strike group had arrived in the U.S. Central Command SITCOM's area of control. On Tuesday, SITCOM posted on X that the Lincoln was in the Indian Ocean and crews were performing routine maintenance. The arrival of the fleet of warships in the Middle East comes as Trump has publicly threatened to attack Iran, and U.S. officials say the White House is considering options to strike the Islamic Republic earlier this month. Trump decided against attacking Iran over concerns that the U.S. did not have enough military power in the region to topple the government in Tehran and defeat Iran counterattacks. Over the past week, the U.S. is engaged in a significant military buildup in the Middle East, including warships, fighter jets, and advanced air defense systems. The military equipment will give Trump larger strike options for attacking Iran and additional abilities to shoot down Iranian missiles targeting U.S. bases in Israel. So as you can see, they pretty much got everything they need. Pretty much, they got the warships, they got the fighter jets, you know, the helicopters to carry soldiers onto the ground. They're pretty much building up they're bringing so much weaponry to the Middle East, to the shores of Iran for possible escalation. And it's seeming like every day is heating up right now. It's more if we're getting closer and closer to today. This is what all these articles are. These are articles from the past couple of days, week. This is leading up to right now where we're at and how close we really are to like this escalating to the point of the military conflict starting. So over the past week, the U.S. has engaged. Oh, I already read that part. Iran has said that they will respond to any attack by launching missiles at Israel and U.S. bases in the region. Tens of thousands of American troops are positioned at over a dozen military facilities in the area. The U.S. force presence in the Middle East is now similar to the American military footprint in the region when Israel attacked Iran in June, starting a war that lasted 12 days. Trump said the USS Lincoln will give up operations to strike Iran, but the president left an open possibility of de-escalation. I want to show you guys this right quick. This is a good video. This is from AI Tilly. Why Iran's swarm tactics won't worry the U.S. military. This is a reenactment video, of course, from AI Tilly. It's one of the best YouTubers out there, but this is going to give you an idea of like how this battle is going to go, because this is going to be a long, drawn out fight, but at the end, the U.S. is still going to come out on top. We're just as evident of that. And then Israel's going to get what they want. They're going to get a regime change. So I'm going to play this video. I'm going to step away for a minute. My lips kind of getting a little chapped, so I gotta deal with that.
Largest navy with its massive aircraft carriers and advanced destroyers. Well, Iran's strategy isn't to face the U.S. head-on. It is to rely on asymmetric warfare. Take this for example. These two civilian ships are sailing near an aircraft carrier. Everything looks completely normal. But that with the press of a button. The shipping container doors opens up and out comes a missile. These are the self-made Iranian anti-ship missiles, which can still pack a punch. This is instantly followed by a swarm of low-flying drones and fast attack boats from within the cargo ships, and not to forget the small midget submarines. These submarines can launch torpedoes at the same time. In quick succession, it can pass through the carrier's strike defense system and even achieve 10% impact. They might not sink the carrier, but they can damage it enough to make the waters too dangerous for the US to operate in. So let's look at the 4 key tactics they would likely use. Tactic 1. First and perhaps most famous is the Swarm. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates hundreds of small, fast attack craft armed with heavy machine guns, rockets, and anti-ship missiles. The tactic here is simple, but deadly. Instead of trying to fight a US destroyer one-on-one, which they would lose, they deploy dozens of small boats simultaneously from every direction. The goal is to overwhelm the US ship's defensive systems, like the phalanx, by presenting more targets than the ship can track and destroy at once. Moving to Tactic 2, mining the Strait. Next, we have the Silent Killer, mining the Strait of Hormuz. This is the world's most critical oil.
This is giving you guys like an idea of like how the fight on the water would work. Now, of course, there's also recent reports today that Iran wants to close the Strait of Hormuz, which it could be done. But how does that really look? Because like if they close it, everyone would be affected, not just, you know, the U.S., who also gains a lot of their oil shipments from Saudi Arabia, who ships a lot of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz, but China and Russia would also be affected by this closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And then once Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, they would have to militarily keep it closed because the U.S. is right there at the shore, and now that the Strait of Hormuz is closed, now they would have another reason to go and start the conflict with Iran because they closed a shipping route that's going to affect everyone economically. That's going to hurt the oil supplies, and then people are going to have to raise up the oil prices even more.
Chill point. Iran maintains an inventory of thousands of naval mines, including smart mines that can listen for the specific acoustic signatures of enemy ships. In a conflict, Iran could use submarines, small boats, or even disguised civilian vessels to drop mines right into the shipping lanes. The goal.
What the hell happened? All right, video. Sorry about that. Video. Pause for a minute. Fuck L YouTube, bro. L fucking YouTube sometimes.
Iran could use submarines, small boats, or even disguised civilian vessels to drop mines right into the shipping lanes. The goal here isn't just military, it's economic. This would deny the U.S. Navy safe passage and immediately spike global oil prices, inflicting massive economic pain on the U.S. and its allies. Here comes Tactic 3, the kill zone. Third is the geographic advantage, coastal missile batteries. The Iranian coastline is mountainous and rugged, perfect cover for mobile missile launchers. The regime also employs shoot and scoot tactics using truck-mounted cruise and ballistic missiles. They fire a missile and immediately move to a new hiding spot before the U.S. can strike back. This effectively turns the Gulf into a kill zone, where U.S. ships are under constant threat of fire from land with nowhere to hide. Tactic 4. We have the ambush threat, midget submarines. The Persian Gulf is actually quite shallow, which makes it difficult for massive U.S. nuclear submarines to operate. However, it is perfect for Iran's fleet of diesel-electric mini-subs, like the Ghadar class. These small subs can sit silently on the seafloor, waiting for a target to pass overhead before firing torpedoes. It's a surprise ambush tactic designed to damage high-value assets, like carriers or destroyers, while remaining almost impossible to detect by sonar. These small but stealthy diesel-electric submarines designed for operations in the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf pose a significant threat to U.S. aircraft carriers. The Ghadar-class submarines, which are difficult to detect due to their small size and low acoustic signature, could position themselves in strategic locations near key naval choke points, such as the Strait of Hormuz. Equipped with heavyweight torpedoes and capable of deploying naval mines, these submarines could launch surprise attacks on U.S. aircraft carriers. By waiting in ambush near expected carrier movements, Ghadar-class submarines could fire a coordinated torpedo strike, targeting the hull and propulsion systems of U.S. carriers. A successful torpedo strike on an aircraft carrier could disable its flight deck operations, significantly reducing the U.S. Navy's ability to project air power in the region. Additionally, these submarines could lay underwater mines in critical sea lanes, forcing U.S. warships into predetermined ambush zones where Iranian missile and drone attacks could follow up. Tactic 5.
Yeah, this like I said, this conflict right now can go either way it goes right now, especially with this especially how like the battle at sea the battle of sea can go either way it goes right now. But honestly speaking, Iran got we're people have to remember this. This is important. We're going to fight Iran on its soul. They're not. Is a difference between them fighting us here in America and us fighting them there. They have a strategic advantage by us going to their shores and fighting them. They know that better than us. So it doesn't make sense on face value because, like, the way I look at it right now, they have the strategic advantage. We actually don't have the advantage in this right now. We are going to take a lot of loss of life. So people have to just gotta, we really, that's why I said, like, pushing for this war, it's like insane to me that people are really asking for this, because like the way you look at it on face value, there are going to be a lot of lives lost. Because like when you go fight the enemy on their soul, they know it better than you do. They know tricks and traits that you don't. They know ins and outs that you don't. They know secrets that you don't. They have strategies that they've prepared years in advance for this type of conflict. You know, people may think this is going to be an easy going conflict or whatever. Don't let some of these industry plants just give you this false reality that we're just going to go in there, we're just going to bomb the regime and that's it. No, that's just not it. That's just not reality. This could go either way, either way right now. Now, of course, if we were to get all of our ships together and just go to Iran, there would be no problem. But right now, currently speaking, just for this one aircraft carrier, the biggest one, along with some small other ships that are carried along with this with the USS Abraham Lincoln, it's still not going to be an easy day right now for none of these U.S. troops that are possibly going to lose their lives. So
We can't ignore the aerial threat. This is drone warfare. Iran has invested heavily in becoming a drone superpower in the Middle East, in a conflict that would use UAVs not just for surveillance, but as loitering munitions, essentially suicide drones. The tactic is to launch them in massive waves to crash into the sensitive radar dishes and flight decks of U.S. ships. The goal is to blind the fleet's sensors and halt flight operations, leaving the ships vulnerable to missile attacks. Let's look at Tactic 6. The U.S. fleet relies on ports in Bahrain and air cover from bases in Qatar to sustain the fight. Iran possesses the largest ballistic missile arsenal in the Middle East. Their strategy includes massive missile barrages targeting these static headquarters and logistical hubs. The goal isn't just to destroy buildings, but to deny the U.S. Navy the fuel, ammo, and command support it needs to stay in the fight. If the ships have nowhere to dock, they can't stay in the Gulf. Iran's military strategy for targeting U.S. air bases in the Middle East would likely rely on a coordinated, multi-domain approach. By combining its missile arsenal, drone capabilities, and proxy forces, Iran aims to overwhelm American defenses and inflict significant damage. Among the high-value targets, Iran would likely prioritize our Al Udeid air base in Qatar, naval support activity, NS at Bahrain, multiple U.S. military bases in Iraq, and Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. This approach reflects Tehran's broader strategic objectives, deterring U.S. military intervention, retaliating decisively in the event of conflict, and asserting its influence across the region. One of the most probable targets in a direct confrontation is Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. As the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, it hosts around 8,000 American troops and serves as the regional headquarters for U.S. Central Command. The base plays a crucial role in supporting air operations across the region and is a central pillar of the U.S. military presence in the Gulf. To strike Al Udeid and similar bases, Iran could deploy ballistic missiles such as the Fateh 110, which has a range of about 300 kilometers, or the QM-1, capable of reaching up to 800 kilometers. If it uses a proximity fuse, it may detonate just above the surface, airburst, to maximize fragmentation and increase the affected area.
yeah, like I said, the military base is like literally right there, and it's like easy prey target. So not only would Trump be putting the military soldiers that are on the USS Abraham Lincoln's lives in danger, he also would be possibly risk sacrificing soldiers at the base in Qatar. So that's more lives that are being lost for a meaningless conflict where we could just have diplomatic ties with Iran. We don't actually have to go and fight them. We can have a diplomatic solution with them. We can have a solution with them instead of going there and just starting a military conflict. This is not. It doesn't. War is costly, and it's not worth it. So instead of going out here and pushing for war, we could be pushing for peace. That's the option. We don't actually have to go out here and push for war. We could push for peace. We could do this diplomatically. And again, I get it. You don't want Iran to have a nuclear bomb. I don't want them to have a bomb either. But there's ways to go about this to where we don't actually have to lose lives, and tax dollars don't have to go to funding in this. This is all like being manipulated by a certain group of people that get whatever they want. So,
complete destruction of unarmored structures and lethal to unprotected personnel. Extreme overpressure, possibly 100 to 300 psi in this zone, will destroy hardened aircraft shelters, fuel tanks, and command posts if directly hit. Depending on where these missiles are launched from, they pose a credible threat to key U.S. installations across the Gulf. In Bahrain, the Naval Support Activity NAS base serves as the headquarters of the U.S. Naval Forces Central Command and the U.S. Fifth Fleet. With more than 9,000 American personnel stationed there, it is the only permanent U.S. naval shore base in the Middle East. Its port facilities are capable of accommodating aircraft carriers and amphibious ships, making it a vital maritime hub. Given NSA Bahrain's role, Iran may also target U.S. warships in port or operating in nearby waters. It possesses a highly developed arsenal of anti-ship cruise missiles, launched from coastal batteries or naval platforms, which can threaten U.S. naval superiority in the Persian Gulf. Iran may also exploit proxy forces including Yemen and pro-Iranian militias in Iraq to launch indirect attacks or stir instability within Bahrain itself. In Kuwait, the U.S. maintains a strong presence at Camp Arifshan and Ali Al Salem Air Base, which together host around 13,500 troops as of 2021. These facilities act as key operational and logistical hubs, particularly for U.S. missions in Iraq and the broader Gulf region. They also use the Soviet-era anti-ship missiles with solid booster and liquid fuel attached to it, produced during the Cold War, is employed for the attacking mission.
Interesting.
When launched, the first stage booster fires off for 2 to 3 seconds, after which the second stage takes off. It searches for a target using analog radar. When locked and ready, it can destroy a ship using a hollow-shaped charged warhead. This has the potential to either destroy or sink a cargo ship if it hits at the right angle. Scenario 2.
This is so like interesting to me that how warfare has really morphed since World War II. You look at World War II, the war of all wars, that's really kind of shaped the new world order right now. Warfare has really changed a lot since then. Like we have missiles that have hypersonic trackers right now. Well, not hypersonic. They have heat trackers. You know, is it crazy to me like how war is pretty much morphed from how it used to be to now? It is crazy. Like you look at it back then, like you look at how war was then compared to now, like it's really become more of like less ground battle and more like air and sea battle. You know, sometimes it could be, you know, ideological battle, economic battle. You know, the Cold War, that was the start. Now we're in a second Cold War right now with China.
Involves the use of a Soviet-era missile that was re-engineered by the Iranians, converting it into an anti-ship missile. The converted SA-2 missile can be launched from within 45 kilometers or 28 miles from the target. Take, for example, the U.S. destroyers sailing through the Red Sea. When fired, these anti-ship missiles can travel at a speed of Mach 3.5. These actions create a psychological impact and disrupt trade routes. Speaking of Iraq, several U.S. military bases are located relatively close to Iran's western border. Their proximity places them well within range of Iranian missile strikes, adding to the strategic and tactical complexity of the region's security landscape. Iran's missile forces are dispersed across hardened underground bases and mobile launchers, which enhance their survivability and make rapid, surprise strikes more feasible. These launch platforms are designed to withstand preemptive attacks and deliver quick retaliatory blows. In terms of targeting, Iran would likely aim to paralyze air operations by striking runways, fuel storage facilities, aircraft shelters, command centers, and logistics nodes. The objective would be to degrade U.S. combat capability quickly and limit its ability to respond effectively. But if you want to understand U.S. new military strategy on the Middle East, check out our future upcoming video here.
All right, that's that. I want to show you guys that. Now we're going to get into exactly how many weaponry are we really sending over there. Let's really break it down right now to understand exactly the type of weapons we're sending over there to prepare for a potential strike against Iran. So the United States Air Force has deployed at least 42 heavy transport aircraft to lift supplies into the Middle East during the 8 days between January 18th and January 26th. Data compiled from publicly available flight trackers showing that 41C 17A Globemaster, 3 aircraft and 1 C-5M Super Galaxy landed at regional facilities transferring supplies from the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany, bases in Qatar, Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia, which have for decades been central hubs of the Western military presence in the region. All received supplies. Facilities include the base in Qatar. Let's get down. Hold on, let me go skip down right quick. So let's go down to all these right quick. So the C5 and C5, the C-17 and C5 are the largest military transports in the Western world, with the former having a 77,000 kilogram payload and the latter to 125,000 kilograms in an intercontinental range on internal fuel. Neither of the aircraft is currently in production, however, which has raised questions regarding the future of the fleet and the aircraft's eventual replacement. It remains highly uncertain what kind of assets have been positioned in the Middle East, although further deployments of air defense systems are considered highly likely. The surge in supplies closely coincides with the arrival of the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group and of Air Force F-15E fighters, among other assets. Unconfirmed reports on January 28th indicate that Washington may order a naval blockade of Iran, with the possibility remaining significant that this would lead to further escalation, including direct attacks on targets in the country. During under 12 days of Israeli and U.S. attacks on Iran from June 13 to 24, American air defenses came under considerable pressure from Iranian ballistic missile attacks, with the U.S. Army having spent over $2 billion worth of surface-to-air missiles from the THAAD system alone, contributing to the defenses of Israeli targets and expanding a quarter of its global arsenal. The depletion of the SM-3 and SM-6 anti-ballistic missiles by the U.S. Navy to further support Israeli air defense efforts were also tremendous, causing similar concerns for the service-owned anti-missile arsenal. Israel's own anti-missile defenses are estimated to have suffered similarly serious depletion. Despite missile defense efforts, Iran strikes cause significant damage to strategic and military targets across Israel, with over 40 infrastructure facilities as well as 5 major military bases across the country having been hit. So that goes to show you earlier why Israel is reprehensive about exactly getting involved with this war, and why they're not in a rush. Basically, they're not in a rush yet because they haven't really technically recovered yet from that 12-day war. The defensive missiles program haven't really refilled up they haven't really like stockpiled most of their defensive missiles yet. So it would be bad on them if they decide to go to war and they're not restocked on none of their missiles. So it's best on them to have the United States wait until they've restocked most of their missiles, so that when the conflict starts back up again, Israel can be ready to defend itself and to also assist the United States. So now let's go back over here. I know I was somewhere before I got to the video. Where was I? Was I right here? Nope. Read that one. I read that one. Okay, so this one right here is basically a good illustration. I forgot, things got to reload. So what's about to be put up right now is a good what's about to be pulled up right now is a picture. Basically, it's like a weapons map of all the weaponry that we've deployed to the Middle East right now for this possible confrontation with Iran. So I'm going to show you exactly all that we have there right now, currently speaking. So as you can see right here, we have naval assets, illustrated, Tomahawk, we have the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group. This is the U.S. Abraham Lincoln right here. Let me click the photo up so you guys can see a little bit better. Wish I could zoom in a little bit. hold on. I'm about to zoom in for you guys so you guys can see a little bit. Okay. There you go. You guys should be able to see that a lot better now. Okay. So as you can see, this is all that's being deployed right now to the Middle East. As you go up right over here, this is Iran right here, and this is all the military assets that already right down here is where we already have currently right there in the Middle East. And then we also have some right over here, some of our other air bases. But let's go over all of the weaponry that there's currently there in the Middle East. So they have the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group. And you got the USS Abraham Lincoln right there. The Black Knights fighter jets. You got some fighter jets. You have the small frigates that are also with the Abraham Lincoln. You have other U.S. naval ships as well. You have the USS Mount Whitney, USS Lewis B. These letters are in small. Puller, USS Tulsa. And you have other air assets too as well. A bunch of fighter jets, cargo transport planes, U.S. Coast Guard as well, submarines. We have a lot of assets right now in the Middle East to prepare for this conflict right now. So just in case, and then we've been talks about adding far more too as well to also assist the USS Abraham Lincoln. So this is not just all. Go ahead, put that down right quick. So Turkey plans a buffer zone if Iran government falls. So Turkey came out, this was a couple of days ago, that if Iran goes through this war with the United States, which will lead to basically a bunch of refugees and immigrants that are seeking shelter, Turkey was going to plan to open its border to assist for Iranians that are looking to escape the conflict, so that way they don't get in the way or they don't become casualties of war. Turkey is planning to establish a buffer zone on the Iranian side of the border if a worst case scenario unfolds and the government in Tehran collapses. Middle East Eye understands. Top Turkey foreign minister officials on Thursday briefed lawmakers in a closed-door meeting at Parliament, telling them that Ankara is preparing for several potential scenarios regarding Iran, according to two participants who spoke to MEE. Now, this is also going back to what I've spoken about before about the Iranian dollar being relatively just worthless right now. So Iran's rial hits new low after unrest sparked by economic crisis. Iran's currency dropped to a record low of 1,500,000 rials to the U.S. dollar. That's $1, by the way. $1. According to Iranian currency tracking websites, weeks after a protest sparked by the rial's dwindling value rocketed the country, the rial has lost about 5% of its value over the course of this month, according to data from currency tracking website Bombas.com. U.S. holding war games across the Middle East. So the U.S. is they're doing some military practices right now in the Middle East to basically, prepare for the attack. Basically keeping themselves ready. The U.S. troops across the Middle East are engaging in war games to demonstrate their readiness. The U.S. has engaged in significant military buildup in the region, and President Donald Trump is considering a range of options to carry out our regime change in Iran. 9th Air Force will be conducting a multi-day readiness exercise to demonstrate the ability to deploy, disperse, and sustain combat air power across the Central Command SITCOM area of responsibility. A statement from SITCOM on Monday explained this exercise is designed to enhance asset and personnel dysphoria capability, strengthen regional partnerships, and prepare for flexible response execution throughout the SITCOM. As you can see right here, the United States is considering a possible naval blockade of all oil resorts from Iran. So I gotta like open a tab ahead of time. Give it just a moment. Should be on in just a minute. All right. So all right, so let's go ahead and jump back in. The United States is considering a possible naval blockade of all exports from Iran prior to any direct military action, in which the U.S. naval would potentially intercept, board, seize, and possibly even sink tankers carrying sanctioned crude oil from Iran via terminal to ports on the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. According to the Jerusalem Post, in the lead up to the raid earlier this month by the U.S. Special Forces on the Venezuela capital of Caracas, which led to the successful capture of Nicolas Maduro, President Donald J. Trump ordered a similar oil blockade of Venezuela, resulting in the seizure of 7 oil tankers, most with ties to Iran and Russia. So this was Trump. He spoke. He had a rally just recently in Iowa. Now we're about to get into this right now. If you're still up, like I said, like the video right now. I'm late and I know I'm streaming to like a smaller audience right now, so I will be back. I'll try to come back tonight early, but I doubt it. I might just wait till Saturday to stream because it'll be easier. That's the video can play.
And by the way, there's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now. So we'll see. I hope they make a deal. I hope they make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time they'd have a country.
This is Khomeini basically responding to the United States from all the threats they're being imposed on, and then all the unrest that's going on in the country. This was sent on January 17th. And this is from Khomeini, and I quote, "We do not intend to lead the country toward war. However, we would not just let go of the criminals inside the country either. Worse than the internal criminals or the national criminals. We would not let go of them either." So this is him basically letting everyone know that there were foreign actors among the protests, and they were also captured. So this was yesterday. This is from anti-war, and this was Marco Rubio at his committee hearing. So President Trump is considering strikes on Iran, hoping the attack will restart anti-government protests. Reuters reported on Thursday that Trump was hoping strikes on Iran would reignite the protest movement earlier this month. The president was considering striking the Iranian government security forces in response to the crackdown of demonstrators. Trump initially asserted he would attack Iran for killing protesters, but decided against strikes because they lack enough military assets in the Middle East to deliver a decisive blow to the Islamic Republic and protect American forces from retaliatory attack. The president has since ordered a massive military buildup in the Middle East. In an effort to justify the major U.S. military buildup in the Middle East, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that the United States must be prepared for an Iranian strike on American troops in the Middle East. He asserted that President Donald Trump had the right to launch a preemptive defensive attack on Iran, Rubio told senators that the U.S. needed a large military footprint in the Middle East because at some point, as a result of something, the Iranian regime decided to strike at our troops in the region, Rubio said. Tehran has maintained it does not seek a war and would only attack U.S. bases in the Middle East if Iran were attacked. Rubio went on to argue that Trump could order an attack on the Islamic Republic if Iran does not attack the U.S. The president always reserves the preemptive defensive option, the Secretary of State said. So that's today. And let's see, I got anything else? I do have another. Well, that's pretty much what I really wanted to get into today. So that's the entire timeline of what has happened up until now, up until then to now. So we pretty much covered everything we need to cover right now on that. And like I'll say this, and I'll say this right now. We don't know exactly when the attack's going to happen, but when it does happen, you best believe I will be on live and I will cover it. So I've already gone over the timeline of how it started and how did we get here and where are we going right now and how bad is this military confrontation going to be and how costly is this going to be, not only economically, but how many lives are we going to lose. So, but yeah, it wasn't a long stream tonight like I hoped, but I'll be back. I was contemplating not even going live because I'm not even myself right now. I don't feel like I'm even locked in right now with the stream. But I got some news for you guys. I'll be started streaming on Kick. I'll try to stream Saturday. I'll try to stream twice on Saturday. I'll probably do some politics on Saturday and I'll also do a chill stream. And then I got a stream this upcoming Thursday. I'm going to be doing a collab on this Thursday. It's going to be a chill stream. It's going to be a surprise guest got coming on right now. Not a politician. It's going to be some streamy stuff I'm going to do. It's going to be a girl. She don't come on stream. I'm going to give you guys like an exciting stream on that one. So write in the comment section what you want me to ask her, like some dating questions or something like that, you know. Bro, I already feel like I'm not even myself right now, bro. I'm not even thinking right now, bro. Anyways, like I said, I'll be back tomorrow. I'll see you guys then. Have a good rest of your day.